walking onto stage with measured steps, pausing at center stage, making eye contact with the audiencee. You know what the biggest lie women have been told about love is? Another pause, scanning the audiencee, that you need to give everything, to get everything, that you need to be available 24/7, that you need to say yes to every request, every demand, every whim of a man's attention. That love means erasing your boundaries, dissolving your identity, and becoming whatever he needs you to be in that moment. This is not love. This is self-destruction disguised as devotion. I am Shiheng Yi, and for the past 2 decades, I have studied the ancient wisdom of human relationships through the lens of Shaolin philosophy. I've counseled thousands of people, men and women, who came to me broken, confused, wondering why their relationships failed, why love seemed to slip through their fingers like sand. And today I'm going to share with you the one boundary that changes everything, the one principle that not only transforms how men see you, but how you see yourself, the boundary that doesn't push love away, but draws it closer, deeper, and makes it last forever. But first, let me tell you about Li Mei. Li Mei came to our monastery 3 years ago. She was 28, successful in her career, beautiful, intelligent, but she was exhausted, completely drained. She had just ended her 4th relationship in 2 years, and each time, the pattern was the same. She would meet a man, they would connect, and slowly she would begin to reshape herself around his needs. If he liked adventure, she became adventurous, even though heights terrified her. If he was a night owl, she gave up her morning meditation practice to stay up late with him. If he needed space, she gave him so much space that she disappeared entirely from her own life. And every single time, after months of this selfless devotion, the man would leave. They would say things like, "I don't know who you really are anymore," or "something feels missing," or the most devastating of all, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." Li Mei looked at me with tears in her eyes and asked, "Master Yi, what am I doing wrong? I give them everything. I love them completely. Why do they always leave?" Pausing, looking directly at different sections of the audience, and I told her what I'm going to tell you today. She wasn't loving them. She was trying to earn their love by erasing herself. And no man, no human being can truly fall in love with someone who isn't really there. You see, there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what creates lasting love. We think love is about union, about becoming one, merging completely, having no separation. But the deepest wisdom teachings, from Buddhism to Taoism to modern psychology, tell us something different. Love isn't about losing yourself in another person. Love is about 2 whole, complete individuals choosing to walk the path of life together, each maintaining their own inner fire while sharing its warmth. And this brings us to the boundary that changes everything. Self-preservation through self-respect. Das step. Now, when I say self-preservation, I don't mean selfishness. I don't mean putting yourself first at the expense of others. I mean maintaining the sacred space of your own identity, your own values, your own dreams, your own non-negotiable standards, regardless of who walks into your life or walks out of it. Let me share with you the story of Master Chen's daughter. Master Chen was my teacher's teacher, a wise monk who lived in the mountains of Henan province. He had a daughter named Xiao Feng, who was known throughout the region for her beauty and kindness. Many wealthy merchants and even nobles sought her hand in marriage. One day, a particularly persistent suitor, a successful trader named Wang, came to Master Chen and said, "I will give you anything for your daughter's hand. Gold, silk, land, whatever you desire." Master Chen smiled and said, "You must ask my daughter, not me. But I will tell you this, she has one requirement that no man has ever been able to meet." Wang was intrigued. What requirement could possibly be so difficult? Master Chen replied, "She requires that any man who wishes to marry her must be able to stand in her presence for 1 full day and never once try to change her, improve her, or convince her to be different than she is. He must love exactly who she is. In this moment, completely, Wang laughed. That's easy. I adore everything about her. The next morning, Wang arrived at sunrise, confident and eager. Xiaofeng welcomed him warmly and began her daily routine. First, she spent 2 hours in meditation and prayer. Wang, being a busy merchant, grew restless after 20 minutes and suggested they do something more productive together. Strike one. Then, Xiaofeng spent time painting, something she was passionate about but not particularly skilled at. Wang, wanting to help, began pointing out ways she could improve her technique, offering to hire her a better teacher. Strike two. In the afternoon, when a beggar came to the door, Xiaofeng gave him food and coins. Wang pulled her aside and explained that she was being taken advantage of, that she should be more careful with her charity. Strike three. By evening, Wang was frustrated. I love you, he said, but you could be so much more efficient with your time, so much more practical with your money, so much more focused on useful skills. Xiaofeng smiled gently and said, you love who you think I could become. But I need someone who loves who I am right now, today, in this moment. Until you can find that man, whether he is you or another, I will wait. Wang left that evening, and like many others before him, he never returned. But 6 months later, a humble scholar named Lu came to the village. When he heard about Xiaofeng's requirement, he said quietly, I would like to try, not because I want to win her, but because I want to learn what it means to love without conditions. Liu spent the day with Xiaofeng. He sat quietly while she meditated, not checking the sun or tapping his feet. He watched her paint, not with the eyes of a critic, but with the eyes of someone witnessing something sacred. When she gave to the beggar, he simply smiled, recognizing her generous heart. At the end of the day, Xiaofeng asked him, did you not see things you wanted to change about me? Lu replied, I saw a woman who has created a beautiful life according to her own values. Why would I want to change a masterpiece? They were married 3 months later and remained deeply in love for 60 years until the day they died within hours of each other, returning to center stage. And now, what does this ancient story teach us about modern love? First, Xiaofeng never compromised her core values or daily practices to attract a man. Her meditation, her art, her charity, these were non-negotiables. They were part of who she was. Second, she required that any man in her life love her as she was, not as he thought she should be. Third, she was willing to be alone rather than be with someone who wanted to change her. This, my friends, is the boundary that makes men fall in love forever, the boundary of self-preservation through unwavering self-respect. Exit. But let me be very clear about what this boundary looks like in practical terms, because this is where most people get confused. This boundary is not about being difficult, demanding, or high maintenance. It's not about creating arbitrary rules or playing games. It's not about being inflexible or refusing to grow. This boundary is about knowing who you are at your core and refusing to betray that person for anyone's approval, including his. Let me give you some real examples. Sarah was a yoga instructor who loved starting her day with sunrise practice. When she started dating Michael, he complained that her 6 a.m. routine meant she went to bed too early and wasn't available for late night activities. The old Sarah would have given up her morning practice to keep him happy. But Sarah had learned about boundaries. She said, Michael, my morning practice is essential to who I am and how I show up in the world. I love sharing evenings with you, but I need to honor my sleep schedule. We can be creative about how we spend our time together, but this practice isn't negotiable. Michael's first reaction was frustration, but something interesting happened over the following weeks. He started to see Sarah's commitment to her values as attractive. He began to respect her discipline. Eventually, he said, I've never met anyone so clear about what matters to them. It's actually inspiring. Or consider Maria, a single mother who had a boundary about introducing men to her children. She wouldn't allow anyone to meet her kids until they had been consistently dating for 6 months. and even then, only if she could see real long-term potential. When she met David, he pushed for this introduction after just 6 weeks. "If you really cared about me, you'd want me to be part of your whole life," he argued. The old Maria might have caved, worried about seeming cold or overly protective. But Maria had learned that her children's emotional security was non-negotiable. She said, "David, I care about you deeply, which is exactly why I need to move at a pace that protects everyone involved. My children have already experienced the loss of their father leaving. I won't introduce uncertainty into their lives unless I'm confident about the stability of our relationship." David could have walked away. Instead, he found himself even more attracted to Maria's fierce protectiveness and clear priorities. "I've never dated a woman who was such a devoted mother," he told her. "It makes me want to be worthy of that level of commitment." You see, when you maintain boundaries around your core values, something magical happens. You stop attracting men who want to change you, and you start attracting men who are inspired by your integrity. But here's what's even more important. You stop needing their validation to feel worthy of love. Let me share with you the 3 pillars of this transformative boundary. As pillar 1, know thyself completely. In our monastery, we have a saying, before you can love another, you must know who you are when no one else is in the room. Most people enter relationships as half-formed beings, hoping the other person will complete them. But completion cannot come from outside. It must come from within. This means knowing your values, not the values you think you should have, but the ones that actually guide your decisions. It means knowing your dreams, the ones that make your heart race when you imagine them, not the ones that sound impressive to others. It means knowing your non-negotiables, the things you simply cannot compromise without losing yourself. I once worked with a woman named Jennifer who thought her value was family first. But when we dug deeper, she realized that what she actually valued was authentic connection. Family was important to her, but only when those relationships were genuine and healthy. This distinction changed everything about how she approached dating and relationships. As pillar 2, communicate your truth without apology. The second pillar is about honest communication without the desperate energy of needing approval. When you know who you are, you can share that truth calmly and clearly. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to convince anyone to accept them. You simply state them as facts about who you are. I value deep conversation and need time to connect without distractions, so I don't use my phone during dinner dates. I have a meditation practice that's important to my well-being, so I'm not available for calls before 9 a.m. I believe in taking relationships slowly, so I won't be intimate until we've been exclusively dating for at least 2 months. Notice the language here. It's not, "Is it okay if," or "I hope you don't mind it," but it's simply, "This is who I am and how I operate." The right man will respect this clarity. The wrong man will try to negotiate it. And that response tells you everything you need to know. It's pillar 3. Choose yourself over comfort. The third pillar is perhaps the most challenging, being willing to choose your own integrity over the temporary comfort of keeping someone happy. This means being willing to have difficult conversations. It means being willing to disappoint someone. It means being willing to be alone rather than be with someone who doesn't respect your core self. Let me tell you about the most powerful example I've ever witnessed of this principle in action. 5 years ago, I met Alina at a conference in Singapore. She was a successful architect, confident and articulate. But she was struggling in her relationship with James, a man she'd been dating for 8 months. James was charming, successful, and said all the right things about commitment. But he had one troubling habit. He would make plans with Alina and then cancel at the last minute when something more important came up, usually work or time with his male friends. Elena had addressed this pattern multiple times, but James would apologize. make excuses, and promise to do better. The pattern continued. The breaking point came when James canceled their planned weekend getaway, a trip they'd been planning for 2 months, because his boss invited him to a golf tournament. "This could be huge for my career," he explained. "You understand, right? We can reschedule." Elena faced a choice. She could do what she'd always done, swallow her disappointment, make excuses for his behavior, and hope things would change. Or she could honor her boundary around being treated with respect and consistency. She chose herself. Elena didn't scream or cry or issue ultimatums. She simply said, "James, I've realized that we have different definitions of what it means to prioritize a relationship. I need to be with someone whose actions consistently match their words about commitment. I can see that I'm not a priority in your life, and that's not the kind of relationship I want to be in." James was shocked. He tried to argue, to minimize the situation, to promise things would be different. But Elena had made her decision from a place of self-respect, not emotional reactivity. "I wish you well," she said, "but I'm done." 6 months later, James contacted Elena. He had done some serious self-reflection and realized that her boundary had forced him to confront his own inability to commit fully to anything. He had started therapy, changed his approach to relationships, and wanted to know if they could try again. But here's the beautiful part of the story. By then, Elena had met someone else, someone who showed up consistently from day one, someone who treated her weekend plans as sacred as his work commitments, someone who understood that love is demonstrated through actions, not just words. When Elena told me this story, she said, "Master Yi, setting that boundary was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it taught me that I'd rather be alone and respect myself than be with someone and lose myself." This is what the boundary of self-preservation through self-respect looks like in action. It's not about punishing men or playing hard to get. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to accept anything less than what you deserve. And here's what happens when you embody this boundary consistently. First, you stop attracting men who see you as a project to be improved or a challenge to be conquered. Instead, you attract men who are looking for a partner, not a student. Second, you create space for authentic connection. When you're not constantly trying to be what someone else wants, you can be genuinely yourself. And genuine connection can only happen between two authentic people. Third, you inspire respect and admiration. Men are naturally drawn to women who have a strong sense of self, not arrogance or superiority, but a quiet confidence that says, "I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with that person." But let me address the fear that I know many of you are feeling right now. You're thinking, if I set these boundaries, I'll end up alone. Men will think I'm too demanding, too difficult, too much work. Let me tell you something. Any man who is intimidated by your self-respect is not the man for you. The man who is meant for you will be attracted to your boundaries, not threatened by them. He will see your self-respect and think, "Here is a woman who knows her worth. Here is someone I can build something real with." Think about it from a man's perspective. Would you rather be with someone who constantly seeks your approval, who changes herself to fit your moods, who has no clear sense of who she is? Or would you rather be with someone who is secure in herself, who knows what she stands for, who challenges you to be your best self simply by being her best self? The answer is obvious. Now, I want to share with you some practical ways to implement this boundary in your daily life, because knowledge without application is just entertainment. As in datings. When you're dating someone new, pay attention to how they respond to your boundaries. Do they respect your schedule, your values, your pace? Or do they constantly push, negotiate, and try to convince you to be different? A quality man will appreciate your clarity. He'll say things like, "I love that you know what you want," or "Your commitment to your values is attractive," or "I respect that you're not willing to compromise on what's important to you." Thus, in established relationships, If you're already in a relationship where boundaries have been blurred, it's never too late to reclaim them. But be prepared for some initial resistance. Your partner has grown accustomed to you being infinitely flexible, and change can be uncomfortable. Start small. Pick one area where you've been over accommodating and gently re-establish your boundary. Communicate clearly and kindly, but firmly. In communication, I notice the language you use. Are you constantly apologizing for your needs? Are you asking permission to be yourself? Are you explaining and justifying every boundary as if you need approval? Practice stating your truth simply and directly. No, I'm not comfortable with that. That doesn't work for me. I need some time to think about it. Let me share one more story, this one about transformation. I remember Li Mei, the woman I mentioned at the beginning. After our conversation about boundaries, she went through what she called her reconstruction period. For 6 months, she focused entirely on herself. She rediscovered her love of photography, which she had abandoned years earlier. She reconnected with friends she had neglected during her relationship hopping phase. She started therapy to understand why she kept losing herself in relationships. Most importantly, she created a clear vision of who she was and what she wanted in a partner. Not just surface level things like height and career, but deep values, emotional intelligence, consistency, respect for her autonomy, shared vision for the future. When she felt ready to date again, everything was different. She wasn't desperately seeking validation. She wasn't trying to prove her worth through accommodation. She was simply being herself and seeing who was attracted to that authentic self. She met Chen at a photography exhibition. He was quiet, thoughtful, and immediately interested in her artistic perspective. On their first date, when he suggested a restaurant that served meat, and she mentioned she was vegetarian, he didn't try to convince her to try something new or suggest she could just pick around the meat. He immediately suggested a place that would work for both of them. When she told him she preferred to take physical intimacy slowly, he didn't pout or pressure or question whether she was really interested. He said, "I appreciate that you know what you need. Building trust and emotional connection is more important than rushing physical connection." When she mentioned that her photography was a serious passion and she spent several hours each week on it, he asked to see her work and suggested they visit galleries together. In other words, Chen fell in love with exactly who Li Mei was, not who he thought she could become. They've been married for 2 years now, and Li Mei tells me it's the first relationship she's ever had where she feels more herself, not less, when she's with her partner. This is what becomes possible when you master the boundary of self-preservation through self-respect. You don't just find love, you find the right love. You don't just attract a man, you attract a man who celebrates who you are. But remember, this boundary isn't just about romantic relationships. It transforms every relationship in your life. When you respect yourself deeply, you teach others how to respect you. When you refuse to compromise your core values, you inspire others to live with more integrity. When you're comfortable being alone, you become selective about who you allow into your inner circle. Your friendships become deeper because they're based on genuine compatibility, not mutual accommodation. Your professional relationships become more respectful because you're clear about your boundaries and standards. Your family relationships become healthier because you're no longer the person who absorbs everyone else's dysfunction. Returning to center, voice becoming more philosophical again. In our tradition, we have a concept called effortless action. It's the idea that when you're in harmony with your true nature, life flows more easily. You don't have to force things or struggle constantly. This is what happens when you embody healthy boundaries. Relationships become easier, not because they're without challenges, but because you're not constantly fighting against your own nature. You're not exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not. You're simply being yourself and allowing the right people to be drawn to that authenticity. But I want to be honest with you about something. This path isn't always easy. There will be moments when maintaining your boundaries feels scary. There will be times when you'll be tempted to abandon them to avoid conflict or loss. There will be men who walk away because they can't handle your self-respect. There will be friends who get uncomfortable because your boundaries highlight their lack of boundaries. There will be family members who pressure you to be more flexible or compromise more. In these moments, remember this: every time you honor your boundaries, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. And every time you choose self-respect over comfort, you build inner trust. Every time you refuse to betray your core values, you become more magnetic to people who share those values. The woman who knows her worth doesn't need to chase love. Love chases her. The woman who respects her own boundaries attracts people who naturally respect boundaries. The woman who refuses to dim her light to make others comfortable becomes a beacon for others who are ready to shine. Let me leave you with the 3 commitments that will transform your life. S. Commitment 1. I will know myself completely. S. I will spend time understanding my values, my dreams, my non-negotiables. I will not assume I know these things. I will actively explore them. I will journal, meditate, seek feedback from trusted friends, and pay attention to what energizes me versus what drains me. Commitment 2. I will communicate my truth without apology. I will share who I am clearly and directly. I will not hide my authentic self to avoid conflict or judgment. I will not ask permission to be myself or apologize for having standards. S. Commitment 3. I will choose myself over comfort. I will be willing to have difficult conversations. I will be willing to disappoint people. I will be willing to be alone rather than compromise my integrity. I will trust that the right people will respect my boundaries and the wrong people will reveal themselves through their response to those boundaries. My friends, the boundary of self-preservation through self-respect isn't just a dating strategy. It's a life philosophy. It's a way of moving through the world that honors your inherent worth and attracts people who recognize and celebrate that worth. When you embody this boundary, you don't just find love, you become love. You become the kind of person others want to love, not because you're perfect, but because you're authentic. Not because you have no flaws, but because you own your flaws without apology. Not because you never struggle, but because you face your struggles with dignity and grace. The man who is meant for you is not looking for a woman who will lose herself in his world. He's looking for a woman who has created such a beautiful world of her own that he's inspired to merge their worlds together. He's not looking for someone who will say yes to everything. He's looking for someone whose no means something which makes her yes incredibly valuable. He's not looking for someone who needs him to complete her. He's looking for someone who is complete in herself and chooses to share that completeness with him. You are worthy of this kind of love. You are worthy of being cherished exactly as you are. You are worthy of a man who sees your boundaries not as obstacles to overcome, but as evidence of your self-respect to admire. The question is not whether you deserve this kind of love. The question is, are you ready to believe you deserve it? Are you ready to embody the boundary that makes it possible? Your future self, the woman who is deeply loved and respected, the woman who never lost herself in a relationship, the woman who created a life so beautiful that the right man felt honored to be included in it, she is waiting for you to make this choice. Choose self-preservation through self-respect. Choose to be completely yourself. Choose to believe that you are worth loving exactly as you are. The man who is meant for you will recognize this choice and fall in love with you forever because of it. Thank you.